All right, so it's been a while since I've done one of these, but we're going to talk about Avowed and the numbers on it, the end result, how it's been received, and all of that stuff. Before we do, though, gameplay today is Hellbreak Demo. I'll include a link in the description so you guys can check that out as well. And I am working on some AI videos, try and talk about some of the stuff that Grok has been up to and how AI game development is kind of progressing and where the state of that is. But that's taken me a little longer than expected, and this came out, and I wanted to talk about the numbers here, so this is going to be out first. So let's just jump right in and talk about Avowed. So we can see here, this is the Steam page, and you can see mostly positive 4,833 user reviews. So if we dig into that a little bit, and like I did here, verified Steam purchases, over 10 hours played, that number actually goes from mostly positive 78% to very positive 84%. 84% of the 1,980 user reviews from this game are positive. So that can mean one of two things, and I always kind of specify this. It could mean that the longer people play it, the better their impression of it, because they get more into the gameplay and they kind of start enjoying themselves more. So if you duck out early, you might not have as much of an enjoyment as someone who was putting, that 10, 15 hours into the game and actually getting some payoff. It could also mean that the more you play it, the more you were likely to enjoy it. Like you started enjoying it from the get-go and you just continued playing it before you put your review in. It could mean that as well. I'm of the opinion that it could be either one of those, and so we're not really sure how the overall perception is, but I think it's safe to say that there's a fair amount of people here. There's 1,980 user reviews that most of them are positive. Most of these people enjoyed this game. If you dig into the reviews themselves, you can kind of get a sense of things. A lot of the not recommended ones are saying this is a very mid game. The story, the gameplay, the animations, and all that, it's just boring. It's not very good, but it's not terrible. And actually, the recommended reviews also say this is a very mid game. It's kind of fun. It's kind of enjoyable. The story is okay. The graphics are good, but it's not gonna shatter any perceptions. So it's kind of two sides of the same coin. Basically, what I'm getting from these reviews is that this game is sort of fun. It's a mid game. It's kind of like a throwaway. And if a throwaway kind of fun game that might entertain you for a few hours or a few dozen hours is up your alley for $70, then Avowed is your game. Now, it could just be our perceptions of RPGs have been skewed because Skyrim was so well received, and there were a fair amount of comparisons to Skyrim in this that said, this is no Skyrim. Skyrim has done it better. So it could just be a perception there, like, making an RPG that competes with one of those groundbreaking RPGs from days of old is increasingly more difficult because we have these expectations of graphics and next-gen gameplay, and that stuff is very hard to do competently, and we're seeing that in AAA, time and time again, that RPGs of old, they kind of focused on that gameplay and didn't have as big of an investment into the graphics side, into the dialogue side, into all of this, this cutscene generation and all that nonsense. It was more just a grounded RPG with good gameplay and good story and good architecture to form that story from. Whereas these days it's more focused on making it more cinematic, and it loses some of that attention to good gameplay. And I think that is where RPGs are really suffering right now. And so that could be the issue that Avowed is running into. That would be my guess. Because, like I said, there's a lot of people that enjoyed this well enough to give it a favorable review. Now, did I see anybody like shouting from the rooftops, this is the best game ever? No, but they also didn't say this is the worst game ever. So it's in the middle there. So there you go. That's kind of the impression that I got from the reviews. Now, it is something that I personally skipped on because I was just not interested in this game at all. And I haven't been interested in an Obsidian game in a very long time because they've just kind of lost my interest over the years because, the good core people of Obsidian have moved on and they've kind of lost something over those people leaving, and it's just not the same company. They're not making the same games as they used to, and it's just not something I'm interested in. So that's kind of my perspective on Obsidian, and it seems like a lot of other people have that similar perspective, but most people seem to enjoy this game. So that's worth digging into it for me, because I'm sure that there are plenty of people that are huge RPG fans that would blow the $70 just to have that experience and just to get some of that gameplay in and check out the world of Avowed, even if it's not like the best game ever, So that's basically where I got where my opinion on the reviews stand. So let's just talk now about the numbers, because the numbers speak a very different story. It's the same story we've been seeing from a lot of titles lately. Now this one, I guess there might be some quote-unquote wokeness in it or whatever, but I think that there's a bigger story in the AAA sector that really needs more of an attention put on it. And I've kind of been talking about it, and I want to talk about it more because really the thing that I see in the AAA sector is that they sink these huge, massive amounts of money, these huge funds into these games. All these developers, all of this time, all of these resources that they're just blowing on these massive projects, and they're not garnering the user base to justify that cost that they sunk into it. And this is another story in that line of stories, in that AAA saga of blowing money, spending money and not being able to pay it back. Basically, penny wise and pound foolish. Now, we can see from the numbers here, they're not great. You can see the peak is 18,658. That happened on the 22nd of February. And at this point, I don't see them breaking that number. I don't think we're going to see it today, and I don't think we're going to see it next week, because as these things tend to go, the first week, that first weekend after release, people have the time to sink into it, especially in RPG, and so a lot of people are playing it over the weekend, and that's where we see that peak. But the following week, less people are interested in playing it, and subsequent days and weeks, it just keeps going down and down. Now, it could crash fast because it's an RPG that maybe people are checking out of after 15, 20 hours, or it could drop slowly, but it's going to get harder and harder for them to get back to that 18,000 simultaneous user count. So I don't think we're going to see anything higher. We could, but I don't think it's going to happen. I think that's the peak we're going to get with Avowed. So going further into it, we've got these owner estimations now: 130,000, 153,000, 165.4 thousand. That makes good sense. I think these numbers are accurate. I think we're going to take like 150,000 as the splitting the difference here as our baseline. And then we can see the follower count. It hasn't really, it never really got to where it needed to be. I mean, it was 61,000, and then it did have the big jump to 77, and now 94,000 at launch. But that's not the number you'd want to look for. That is, that should have been a lot higher for a game that had such a budget that this had. You would have expected that to be 3 to 4 times that at least, for this thing to even have a chance of making its money back, and we're going to get into that in a moment. But just the follower count kind of precedes the actual end result of sales and player counts. It does have an association. It's a loose association, but it does reveal things, and we did track this beforehand, so it's that big jump isn't going to save them, basically. So let's just talk about those numbers now, because the numbers are very interesting, and we're going to just put Avowed back up on the screen here with some screenshots and video and whatnot. So basically what I'm looking at here is a 6-year development cycle, and this is all rumor and speculation. This is kind of the best we're going to get with Avowed, because they don't disclose these numbers, but these are the numbers that I could come across. 6 years of development time, 100 to 150 devs. At peak, it was 100. It started at 100 and it peaked out at 130 to 150. So we're just going to call it 120 devs on average through that 6 years. We're going to take a baseline of 150,000 total cost for each of those devs. That includes their salary, their bonus, their benefits, and taxes, and all that stuff. Everything that it costs to keep that developer writing code for Obsidian and gainfully employed. I think that's a pretty reasonable number, because that means that their salary is quite a bit lower than that. I mean, it's maybe 100,000 and possibly less, based on the cost of keeping a developer in equipment and tech and you know infrastructure and then healthcare and all that stuff. So that's basically where we're looking at, and what that ends up with a budget for the development costs. And this is just for the developers, but I figured, we're going to be a little charitable here, and we're just going to cost it out for the developers. That ends up $108 million over that course of that 6 years. Now we're going to take another perspective here with the marketing budget, and this is something from a previous video I did, outlining that doubling the development budget to cover that marketing budget is way optimistic, is way over the top. So we're actually going to go way down from this, and we're going to say that it's half of the development budget for marketing. And that kind of, that article that I covered back then kind of said it's usually between half and 3/4. So we're going to go ahead and give them the benefit of the doubt and say it's half. So that's another $54 million. So that total budget ends up at $162 million. Now, if we went to 3/4, it would be $189 million. So not a big difference between marketing budgets of half the dev costs versus 3/4. But we're going to be charitable, and we're going to keep that $162 million. Now, let's go into the actual sales. Now, the sales, as we covered previously, we're going to kind of average it out to 150,000. That's also being a little charitable, but not too much. But let's say that it's 150,000, and the price is $69.99. Let's say that Obsidian takes 90% of that. So their total sales out of Steam are $9,448,000. Now that is way shy of that $162 million, and we usually triple that for the consoles and other platforms and whatnot, and we're going to continue that. Now, another caveat here is that it was an Xbox Game Pass game, so Xbox is basically covering that with the Game Pass subscription. That's way shy of that $70. But we're gonna just say, for the sake of argument, that maybe these numbers are a little low, because it wasn't on an Xbox Game Pass, and so when you have that subscription, you're just gonna get it de facto. So a lot of people that would have bought it on Steam are actually playing it through Game Pass. So we're gonna weigh this, and again, being charitable, weigh this heavily towards Xbox, and say that Xbox took the lion's share of the sales, and we're just going to assume that even though that Game Pass subscription is way under $70, and Obsidian is going to make a fraction of what they would normally make from a regular sale, we're just going to say that the numbers are going to make up for it, and we're going to go ahead and triple it anyway. So we're going to, basically keep it where it is, because I think, barring any really solid evidence, I think that even with a Game Pass game like this at launch, I think you're going to end up with numbers very similar to what you would have gotten if you just sold it as a standalone on Xbox or PlayStation's version or what have you. I think that taking that lion's share, it's going to get you enough more sales to make up for the fact that it's significantly less income from each of those copies being sold. So we're just going to call it even. So again, I'm thinking I might be a little charitable on that, because I don't think that developers make as much when they're on Game Pass, but we're going to give them the benefit of the doubt, and we're just going to triple it again. So we're taking that $9,448,000, and we're going to triple it to $28,345,950. Yikes. So yeah, that basically comes over $130 million short of their total budget. So they definitely did not make their money back on this. And again, that is perspective. That is the story that we've been hearing for several years now. And a lot of people have been calling it, including me, have been calling it, oh, it's because they went woke. It's because they did this. It's because they're piping to their ESG score and they don't care about sales. And some degree of that is true. Now, is that true with Avowed? I don't know. Maybe not, because again, this is a Microsoft-owned property. So they bought Obsidian and they put them to work making this game, and so it was all internal costs. So I almost wonder if the left hand doesn't know what the right hand is doing, and they're just kind of, going full speed ahead with, their typical budget and not being concerned at all about what that game is going to attract in terms of a player base. I don't know. I don't know what's going on there. I do suspect that a lot of these types of stories have been because they were pursuing ESG scores and getting that ESG money over actually making something that would appeal to the gamers, appeal to their customer base. But it could or could not be that in this case. And regardless of that, the end result is they spent way too much money for a game that got way too few sales. And somebody's got to start doing some research on this stuff and figuring out that this kind of budget, this 100 million plus budget for some of these games, for most of these games, is just not sustainable. It's not realistic, and they've gone way beyond what they can support. And somebody needs to figure this out in AAA, or they're all going to go out of business. And if they don't adapt, then they're gonna go under, and that's too bad. But I guess you get what you get, and you get what you deserve. But yeah, I don't know. Something has to be done because this story keeps playing out time and time again, and there's a lot of factors involved, I am sure. And some of those could be the wokeness. It could be that ESG score coming in, trying to get those funding sources, but. That seems to be drying up. That seems to be going away, or at least going under the radar. And it's not gone away. Those ESG companies are still out there. Those investment firms are still out there. That still works the way it did before. They haven't made that disappear. They've just gone very, very quiet with it. But that said, I think that is going to be more and more difficult to get those kind of funding sources. And they're going to have to start making games that players are going to want to play and spend the kind of money that will be able to cover their, cover their sales, or their sales will be able to cover their budgets. So they're going to have to start chasing down those customers and figuring out where they can make a game that will actually make the budget back, make the budget and marketing back. So I don't know. It's a heck of a quandary, and it's an interesting story to see play out because we just keep seeing the same thing happen again and again and again with these games. That they're just spending way too much money and not making enough sales to cover it. And this is yet another one. So there's Avowed for you guys. Hope you enjoyed this vid. If you like these kind of things, subscribe to the channel, and I will talk to you guys later.